What's up, Transformers fans? Anchorpete here, and I'm with my good friend, Mr. Brian. Core's hair. How you doing today, Brian?
Doing good, Pete.
You took off your glasses. What's going on over here?
You know what? I'm sick of looking at the little reflection of my glasses in the monitor.
Yeah.
Do I look that much different? Okay, I'll put them back on.
No, do it. I get way more glare when I put my glasses on. Like, you can't even see my eyes.
Yeah, I see little green boxes. You know, I don't like it. Whatever. No one cares.
Take them off, man. It's all good.
Yeah.
I've done the glasses thing for my YouTube shows before, and I end up looking like Elijah Wood in the Sin City movie. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Which is like these glowing lenses.
Yeah.
So this is the channel. It's Comic Books, not Comic Books Explained. That's the channel that has a lot more subscribers. This is Comic Books Transformed, where Brian and I talk about the movies, video games, any kind of adaptation of some of our favorite comics. And you know what? Sometimes that can go in the opposite direction too, like with Transformers, which essentially started out as a toy line, very quickly became a comic, a cartoon. And so there are great comic book versions of Transformers. There are great animated versions of Transformers. There's maybe even one great live action Transformers movie. But today, we're going to be talking about Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom. There we go. That was a lot.
That was enough.
So, Brian, you're not even wearing a freaking Transformers shirt, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I should be. Sorry. Sorry to disappoint. I'm just disappointed myself as much as I'm disappointed in this show.
Well, why don't we show everybody your shirt, though? It's pretty hot. Let's see.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's a Star Wars and Rampage mashup. It has, Rampage, the old NES game or arcade game.
Yeah.
So it has a Rancor and a Wampa fighting down the Death Star, much like George and Ralph and Lizzie from Rampage would fight in a city.
Oh my God, he knows the names of them and everything too. That is awesome. That's cool. So, Brian, we had a kind of like a very brief discussion just before we started recording, and it was just basically how we've said, we kind of say the same things about this Transformers War for Cybertron show each time, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that, the main complaints that we have are that some of the characters are completely unlike any version of Transformers characters we've seen before. And we've even got a little bit of that with the Beast Wars characters now in this show. And then besides that, some of the voice acting choices we've had issues with. And I think one of the main choices that we've had issues with is the continuous reusage of models of Transformer characters just to be like multiple characters. There's so many different Seekers. There's so many different versions of the camera guy whose name I always forget. Reflector.
Oh, and this is Refractor, but the original was Reflector.
Yeah. So those are our main gripes. And one thing for Kingdom, though, was that they didn't really have the opportunity to reuse a lot of models, right?
I still think they did.
Okay.
There were a few scenes with Megatron that had a bunch of refractors in a crowd. They reused Ultra Magnus again in like a dream sequence or something, or vision or something like that.
Yeah.
They used them there. And there were, clearly there were some new character models here with the Beasts.
Yeah.
But that was really it. I think one of the scenes that was so very minor but bugged the hell out of me was there was a scene where everyone was kind of like separated by this kind of vision thing. They were shown something that they I don't know how to describe what they were being shown, but Sideswipe calls out to Sunstreaker, and Sunstreaker, who got a toy in Earthrise, but they just show no model or anything like that because they didn't build it. So It's like, why are you putting this in there? Like really? You should have just cut this 30 seconds out. You paid zero attention to this character the entire time, so why add this now?
Yeah. That's a really good point. Well, that kind of ties in with one of the issues, too, that we didn't bring up. And I don't want to seem like we're just dogging on this show because, there's always some level of enjoyment from watching a Transformers cartoon. And there are some things that they did kind of capture the essence of slightly. But there were choices where they just threw in characters randomly. Like, I personally felt like anything with Nemesis Prime It was like that's just so that they can have this toy. Like there's no other justification.
Well, see now, I mean, I think the best use of Nemesis Prime was probably in the Robots in Disguise cartoon, which was like 2001, 2002.
Okay.
So that was there. Oh God, I don't remember exactly what happened, but Optimus was like something happened with some power source and Optimus that was there, and this reflection came out that turned out to be Nemesis Prime, and he was his own character in that, and it was interesting and it was exciting to have that toy. Like that's a great toy, even though that was a G2 toy they repurposed. But here it's I was really disappointed that Nemesis Prime is like a future version of Optimus.
Yeah,
much like Galvatron is a version of Megatron, which totally works for me, but it seems just lazy, and I just don't like the idea of Optimus getting to that point, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the things about Optimus Prime is that he's never, in any kind of version I've seen, it's like he's never become the corrupted hero. He's not like a Darth Vader type. There's nothing like that, really. They have like alternate
you can make that argument. You can make that argument in the live action movies.
Oh, Jesus Christ. He's like a fucking murderer in those movies. It's horrible.
Yeah, it's a little weird. It's a little jarring. I mean, to me, still my favorite version of Optimus is the G1 version. He's kind of like this, like cowboy, John Wayne cowboy father figure kind of dude, and it's just nothing better than that to me.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Robots in Disguise, right? Is that the one where he was a fire truck? And it's like, okay. Okay. And it was like anime inspired, or like it was
yes. Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, it was a Japanese series. It was the first one that was localized in a long time. And there were many series that haven't been brought over here. There were some continuing G1 series. There was a couple of Beast Wars follow-ups that were actually, traditionally animated shows that this never came to the U.S.
Okay. Yeah, well, I've never seen that version, but yeah, if you're saying that version of Nemesis Prime is better, one of the things that bothered me is that even though I don't like the idea, just like you, I don't like the idea of like Optimus being corrupted. I also think that, like you said, it's very lazy that, it's just a black Optimus Prime, whereas like with Megatron, when Unicron changes him, he makes him look very different as Galvatron, and his alt mode is different. That's not the same case with Nemesis Prime. It's just a black Optimus Prime.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a sucker for a Nemesis Prime toy repaint, and I have several in my collection. Right. Although I don't have this version. It's just, I don't know. It was unfortunate. It was just a way to cram another character in there, I guess, because he didn't really do very much in the show in itself. So.
Yeah. Well, speaking of cramming, they sure did try to cram a lot of stuff from the Beast Wars cartoon into this show.
Yeah, they tried to distill like the entire Beast Wars series into these 6 20-minute episodes along with the other characters. And man, it's just painful, really. And it's weird. One of the things I wrote down when I was trying to think about what I want to say in this episode is that this show at the same time doesn't have enough characters, but at the same time doesn't have enough breathing room for any of the characters either. So it's like a weird, like double-edged sword here. They're trying to cram two or three series worth of information and continuity and references into such a short time span. And I think that, had this show had maybe 18 episodes a chapter rather than 18 total, maybe they had some better voice acting. Maybe they had some more time to flesh out some dialogue, and it might have been better. I mean, I would say maybe I felt this series overall was a little better than the other two.
Yes.
I would say I would probably rank it Kingdom Siege, Earthrise, because Earthrise pissed me off a lot.
I liked Earthrise better than Siege. Because Earthrise felt like each episode was like an individual chapter of like an odyssey, and there was like a different story arc, whereas Siege felt like a lot of like just kind of spinning wheels and like going back to different, like the same locations over and over again. True. So with this, I felt like there was a little bit of that as well, because essentially they're just on Earth, and they don't go anywhere else. And they don't even cut to Cybertron in this one at all. I thought we were going to like cut to the story with Elita 1, but then they show Elita 1 dead at the very end. And
well, they are back. Aren't they back on Cybertron at the end?
At the very end, they're back. Like the last episode, they're back in Cybertron.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, obviously, like spoilers for this show, I guess, right? And I was going to have some order to this, but that brings up a point that I really wanted to talk about too. I was kind of confused by what they were implying. Were they implying that like Elita 1, Jetfire, Shockwave, they're all dead, and their sparks are just on Cybertron? Is that the implication there?
That is the absolute implication there. So I had read somewhere that you can see other bodies in the snow, and that scene where Optimus Prime finds Elita, but I couldn't find him.
Wow.
So basically there was a super cliffhanger at the end of Earthrise where Shockwave and Elita were fighting, and there was a big explosion, and that's the last you see those characters alive. I mean, I guess it's obvious that they all blew up and died, but I mean, you know, it's a weird story beat, I guess, you know?
It is. It is absolutely weird story beat because she's so integral to Siege. And then in Earthrise, it's like you have these two side-by-side plots. And then once you get to Kingdom, that plot is just extinguished, and it's just all Optimus. So it feels...
Yeah, no, it's almost like an extended, like, fridging sequence. You know, it's like everything they did on Cybertron and Earthrise was pointless.
For what? Yeah.
Exactly. It did nothing. And then they just show them dead.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Like, how does it affect the plot? I think if anything... The only thing they take away from that Cybertron section in Earthrise is that they show that Shockwave has that like invisibility, that cloaking power, and Starscream uses that in this one.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean that's it. Otherwise, like, what did it? I mean, I guess it showed this sort of demented plan that they were trying to do by sucking the sparks out of Decepticons, but it ultimately didn't lead to anything at the conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, okay, doubling back and going back to what you were talking about with the kind of cramming everything in, there was one part that just really bothered me, even though I think they did a pretty good job considering that they were trying to cram it in. Do you know what I'm going to talk about?
I think so.
Okay. So, I mean, clearly the kind of discussion we're having, this is obviously, if anyone's watching it, they're just big Transformers fans. So I'm going to not really go in depth about this, but like, everybody that loves Beast Wars loves fucking Dinobot, and they love Code of Hero, right?
Yep.
And that is just a fucking phenomenal episode. I don't think I've ever seen a kid's show do something like that, and I was just blown away when I saw it.
Yeah.
Like when we were kids, Beast Wars kind of moved around a little bit at the time of day that it was on, and at one point it was on real early, and it was like right before I had to get up for school. And I remember watching that episode and being almost like half asleep. And I was like, what the fuck did I just see? Like, that was like fucking incredible.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you could have such a dramatic character death in a kid's show.
Yeah. And I think that episode it stands, the test of time, and it is probably the most famous episode in any Transformers media, animated media.
Yes. I'm trying to think if there's anything that even kind of comes close to it. And maybe some of the later stuff with like Transformers Prime, there's some good beats. But like, I just watched, we always call him the Irish guy, but the guy that does Transformer, or Chris McFeely.
Yeah.
Chris McFeely. And he had an episode on Dinobot, and he was talking about how Dinobot was the first Transformer to be put into the Transformers Hall of Fame. And that, like, he said that a lot of people hold that episode as, like you just said, that's like the greatest piece of Transformers TV, at least.
Yeah.
I think that, like, because I'm not a big fan of the Michael Bay movies. I really like the Bumblebee movie, but like essentially you have the 1986 movie, and then you have that Beast Wars moment, And how did you feel like do you think that they did it any kind of justice in this show?
Well, I think that Dinobot was one of the highlights of Kingdom still. But even saying that, it's still very rushed. And there's no way it could, even if it wasn't rushed, it probably wouldn't compete with the original. And I think that was one of the problems I have with the show roll too, is that there are just tons of little references crammed in there. And I guess normally I like that stuff, but I guess here it's just when everything's so crammed in there as it is, it's like it's too much and not enough, because there's not enough story and there's too much cramming.
Yes, very good point. Yeah, I agree. He was a highlight. At one point he used his little green laser vision.
Yeah.
I think that was maybe my favorite part of the whole show, was when he did that. And he only got taken out by Megatron, the original Megatron, and then the Predacon Megatron. But if you guys have by chance watched this video and you have not seen Code of Hero, definitely go look that up on YouTube or wherever Transformers shows are streaming.
Tubi.
Maybe Tubi. Yeah. Because that's just so fucking good. So he was your favorite bot in this season, or was there any other Maximal or Predacon that you really liked?
I think in terms of the story and importance, I still think Megatron is pretty decent. Regular Megatron is pretty decent here. Starscream had a decent role here. I think he was pretty good. Black Arachnia was pretty good.
Yes.
And Dinobot. Maybe you could argue Primal, but I'm a little iffy on that.
All right, so here's my question about Primal. Right? Wasn't it that Ron Perlman was cast as Primal?
No, Ron Perlman was played off as Primal in the Prime Wars trilogy that preceded this, not story-wise, but the that kind of machinima series that had a lot of the same people working on it, honestly. And he's also going to be off as Primal in Rise of the Beasts, the next movie.
That's what it is. That's okay. Because I remember seeing Ron Perlman was cast, and then I was listening to the voice. I was like, that's not Ron Perlman.
No, that's not Ron Perlman. and I'm glad it's not Ron Perlman, because it would just he's great, and it would just I don't want to see him dragged down by something like this.
Something mediocre, because Optimus Prime was pretty mediocre. I actually thought that Air Razor was pretty good too.
Yeah, Air Razor was pretty good too. Another thing too I found very interesting is you basically get the entire original Maximal crew.
Yeah.
But you only get 4 Predacons, and one of them is Dinobot. So it's like I really felt the loss of Tarantulas and Waspinator, and to a lesser extent Pterosaur.
Yeah.
How do you not put them in there? Really?
Yeah. Are there toys not in the series?
No, not yet. There's a rumor of a Tarantulas figure, but nothing. I believe Pterosaur's figure was canceled.
Okay.
And I don't know about Waspinator, but it stinks. I mean, they threw in that whole backstory about because in the original show, those were the crews of the 2 ships that crashed, but the Maximal ship was carrying all these sparks, but they ejected them into space. So they really just said, all the sparks were there. We got them all down, and they're all dead. We've just been killing each other here.
Yeah. They almost did an Alien 3, and it's these people are dead.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it was just, seeing the full Maximal crew and essentially 3 Predacons was weird.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite Predacon is actually Inferno too. So.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, well, Inferno was season 2, so I'm okay with him not being there. I mean, I love Silverbolt too. But he's more season 2 than or very late season 1.
Yeah.
So I can forgive that. Plus, also Inferno is just a bug, but Silverbolt's he's the fuser. So I mean, who knows how that will work?
And I know you really love the fucking Stingray guy, right?
Oh, Depth Charge is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta love
Depth Charge and his enemy Rampage, right?
Rampage, yeah. Those are some of my favorite moments in Beast Wars with those 2 characters.
So good. Hold on a second. I just was trying to think of one other point I wanted to make. I still had an issue with some of the voice casting though, and just some of the choices too. For instance, they had Tigatron. Tigatron's voice I thought was completely off.
No, his personality was completely off. He was kind of he barely said anything.
Right.
But I mean, when he did, he was kind of aggressive. And that is completely the antithesis of Tigatron.
Right. I thought Rhinox was pretty good voice-wise and the way that he acted.
Yeah, Rhinox was pretty on the nose. I mean, Rat Trap was a bad Brooklyn accent, but it was sort of correct. Junior didn't really say anything.
No.
And Eraser was pretty spot on, I would say.
Yeah. And you know, that show, you know, they're celebrating their 25th anniversary, or maybe they already did or whatever. But each of the characters had such personality on this computer animated show from 25 years ago. And they had very distinct voices and personalities. And it was kind of it was like a refreshing thing compared to these, you know, Siege and Earthrise, where everyone's just like, ugh. You know, every Autobot, Decepticon, they're all just like grim, angry people. Optimus is kind of more similar to his live action version than he is to his G1 version that you love so much.
Yeah.
You know? So, I don't know. It was nice to see the Beast War characters, but it was kind of rough with all the cramming. What do you think about the Ark being turned into a bot?
It was a cool idea. I mean, it was like, it kind of mirrored those Omega Supreme moment from Siege and the Scorponok from Earthrise. That's the big Titan figure, and that they threw it in there for a quick scene, and that was it.
Yeah.
It was interesting, I guess, but I mean, ultimately didn't mean very much. I mean, we knew the toy was coming, so it wasn't a shock or a surprise in any way either. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. We can kind of like wrap up our Kingdom discussion, and then we can start talking about the comic from IDW.
Yes.
But like,
yes.
Finally,
before we get to that, I had to make the one comment. I can't believe we haven't said this before, but that Beast Wars Megatron was a disgrace.
Oh yeah. He was pretty bad.
That was an absolute low point, even below the mediocre level I set for this show. What they did to that character and that voice was horrible.
Yeah. Lord Megatron. Oh, yeah. Lord. Yeah. I think someone on Twitter said that like he seemed like a sort of like a grunt character versus this leader, you know, this great leader from the show.
That was like that voice should have been like Scorponok or Pterosaur or something like that. That's exactly what it was.
So yeah, dude, 100%. He was just a total waste. I was gonna say to you though, my last question is, what are they getting at with Unicron, right? Because Starscream's flipping out, and he's like, oh my God, Unicron wants us to go back to Cybertron. And so it's like, he said, what if we were made to have this war? Remember he says that like right before they leave to go to Cybertron?
Yeah.
Like, what's the implication there? Like, what do you think this version of Unicron's going to be?
I think really what's interesting is that they kind of leave it open-ended at the end.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be more.
Yeah.
I mean, and I hope there's not. I mean, there's going to be a new, at least toy-wise, a new trilogy called Legacy. That's the rumor. Okay. And it's just kind of have like random pieces, less of a theme toy-wise. It's going to be filling in random gaps that they already didn't fill in with these previous toy lines.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that they don't continue this story with that, and they just leave it as a standalone toy line by itself.
Okay.
But they seem to imply that there's supposed to be more. That there's supposed to be more of Unicron. That Nemesis and Galvatron are coming back, and you know that there's something else going on. But it's weird because I mean they always said this was going to be a trilogy, and it was supposed to be like you know bookends.
Yeah.
And it was never implied that it would, and then that was kind of a surprise to me.
Yeah, and I thought it ended on a pretty awkward note too. Like they made statues of Megatron and Optimus.
No, they didn't. They made statues of Cog and Refractor.
Oh,
the clone guys, which was another like what?
Oh, I guess I should have probably paid a little bit more attention at the very end there.
Well, you don't really see them, but I mean, you can't not notice those distinct shoulders that Cog has, and you know, Refractor was a little harder to pick out, but I read that.
Jesus. Okay. Well, that's just weird too.
Yeah.
You know, and it just ends on this weird note because, like, they're like, well, there's not a lot of us, but we have a whole planet of resources now. And then Megatron's like, for now. And, you know, it's like, okay, you know, I get it that you're going to still be an asshole, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's like,
let's
what are you doing this for? Like, what was this whole show about? I mean, it's just Optimus threw the disc away and then realized it was wrong, and it was all about him getting it back. I mean, I don't know.
Allspark.
The Allspark, yes. So ultimately, the way I sum this up is they've really got to do a better job if they're going to make another series. They just have to.
Yeah, I think that if there was an overarching theme, it's that like you can't like violence doesn't solve this problem. That's one of the things like Alita 1 was basically trying to say in the Allspark. That was one detail that they added that I don't think I've ever seen in another Transformers show, where the Allspark and the Cybertronians were like symbiotic with each other. I had never seen that before.
Well, I mean I mean it's weird. There are a lot of MacGuffins in the Transformers universe,
right?
And some of them kind of really overlap. I think the Allspark was really the Allspark is from Beast Wars originally, but I think it was something slightly different there. But I think when it came to the live action movies, it kind of was the Matrix, but it was the Allspark, called the Allspark, probably because of the Matrix movies.
Right, exactly.
So there's just a bunch of weird MacGuffins that have mixed purposes depending on which continuity you're looking at.
Yeah.
So I mean, the original Matrix was a collection of wisdom of previous primes. I mean, the concept of spark didn't exist then. So I think that's a fair assumption that kind of was meant to be.
Right.
So it wasn't like new, but it was one of those things where again, it was just they're trying to reference all these different continuities, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, they had like all the MacGuffins like in this last series, and like I think Optimus had them all at one point. Megatron had them all at one point. Like I have the disc, I have the Matrix, I have the Allspark. You know, they're just
and then there's the Enigma of combination, which I think somebody mentioned at some point, but I don't know that was in this series.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, I think it's a good time to transition to something you said before we started recording, where you were like, let's talk about how to get Beast Wars right. And of course, you were referring to the Beast Wars comic that IDW is putting out, written by Erik Burnham and directed. Let's talk about movies so fucking much. Written by Erik Burnham and drawn by Josh Burcham.
Yeah.
And so I read the first 6 issues. The 7th issue is not out yet. You've read it, of course. And dude, you're right on the money, because like this comic, it does have all the references like you were talking about, and it's only 6 issues, but yet it does not feel crammed, and it really is just like the first 2 episodes or 3 episodes of the show, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think really just this comic is how you do Beast Wars right. It's just it's definitely somewhat of a retelling of the show, but with enough twist and a little more in depth with certain things to make it a little fresh and new. And it was just good and refreshing to read. I think it's the best book IDW has. I mean, it's the best Transformers book IDW is putting out right now. Although I haven't read the new Grimlock book yet, which just came out today. There's it's called King Grimlock, and they essentially transport Grimlock by himself into some fantasy world, and I'm real curious about it. But I'm probably gonna read it after this. Actually,
is it written by Erik Burnham too?
No. Oh God, who wrote this? I don't remember.
It's all good. Well, if you look it up or whatever, like one thing, because some people that watch the show might not be as into the comics as we are, but like the reason why I was asking about writers is that there's James Roberts, who wrote mine and Brian's favorite Transformers comic, More Than Meets the Eyes, and Lost Light. That's like kind of the continuation of the story. He wrote Last Stand of the Wreckers. Then you have John Barber, who has written a ton of Transformers stuff, and of course, going back, you have Simon Furman, who like wrote the original Transformers comics at Marvel. He took over, and then he wrote the British Transformers comics. Erik Burnham is not as known for his Transformers work. He has written a lot of books at IDW, though. He's written Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. He's written Ghostbusters. So he's definitely covered this sort of licensed properties. And I think that he did a fantastic job with these 6 issues.
Yeah, and Josh Burcham is a Transformers regular. He's colored a lot of the previous series before. And he's drawn some things in the past too. And I love his style of art. I think it's very unique, and it just works.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think maybe one of the reasons why you like it is because it seems like that Transformers animated show, right?
Yeah, it's a little more simplistic, a little stylized. And actually, it's funny though, because everyone, the people that don't like Transformers animated are the people that look at it and say, like, this looks stupid. This looks like a dumb kid show. And I probably had some of those thoughts and fears when I first saw the animation style, but it's when you actually watch it and read it and see the care that went into creating it, it's like, this is the most amazing thing. So, and I feel a lot of those vibes here. You're right. That's actually a really good observation.
Yeah. Well, I liked his artwork in this, and I thought it really kind of lent itself to the feel of the book, because the book is unlike a lot of the Transformers books, that especially the Transformers books that are on the shelf right now from IDW, which are very like serious, and they're all about factions and like the politics and stuff. And I love that stuff when James Roberts writes it, because he also makes it humorous and he puts in a lot of crazy violence in it too. But this book was very, very much akin to the Beast Wars show, where the level of violence and stuff kind of matched up with that. The characters' personalities matched up. The overall like concept, where it's just like they're crash landed. There's 2 teams. There's 2 ships, and they essentially have to survive on this planet. They're going to fight each other. Just very basic, but it works. You know.
Yep.
One of the best things about. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, and I think you're going to say the same thing as I was going to. So keep going.
Okay. One of the best things about this book, though, is that it introduced 2 new characters so far, and I just think they're great fucking additions to the franchise.
Yes. So they have introduced Nyx, who is a female Transformer, and the pilot of the is it the Axelon?
Axelon's the actual ship.
Yeah, and then Scold, who was kind of like a Predacon enforcer.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were great additions here. I wanted to say that with Kingdom, I felt one of the highlights was Dinobot, and there was a scene with Dinobot and Airazor, and there was a scene in this comic that with Dinobot and Nyx that very much mirrors that. And although like I thought that was one of the highlights in Kingdom, like this version just blows that out of the water.
Yep.
It's like it's no contest whatsoever.
Right. There's such parallels, because going along with what you said before, where you were like the Kingdom show is like too little breathing room and like not enough character beats or whatever. What you're talking about, there's a sequence where Nyx is captured by the Predacons. She's tortured, and that sequence is kind of drawn out where we know how she's being tortured. We know how it's affecting her. That's interesting because it raises the stakes. Then she gets away and she tries to get to the base, and because they have that thing with the Energon, she has to go into her alt mode, but Tarantula's made it that she can't. So it just like really does this great job of like setting up the tension and how dangerous the situation is and how she could potentially die. And when Dinobot comes in to save her, it feels very much earned. It's like really well done.
Yeah, and that's a very important part of Beast Wars too. The fact that they had to have those animal modes to survive outside of the ship, and that was completely not touched upon in Kingdom.
No. Yeah. That reminds me of one thing that I thought was kind of interesting too. I forgot to ask you this. In Kingdom, is the implication that the Allspark killed the dinosaurs?
Oh my God, is it?
The very first scene in Kingdom is the space bridge opens and the Allspark comes out and it hits Earth and there's a big explosion.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess the Allspark killed the dinosaurs. Oh, great. Oh, you froze.
He said it just like they take a lot more time.
Pete, you're
And
cutting
they
out a little
reflect
bit
his
here.
real beliefs. What's that?
You cut out a little bit. Can you repeat that last 30 seconds or so?
Sure. Like you said, the Dinobot was a highlight of the Kingdom show. And in this book, you know, you kind of see his thought process. You see why he has conflict with Megatron. You see like why he was on Megatron's side to begin with. Then you also understand why he defects. And when he defects, oh man, there was such a great moment too. When the Maximals are able to put up their shield. And all the Maximals are inside the shield, but then he can't go through. I love that.
Yeah, and then the Predacons essentially brutalize him, and and then one of my favorite moments after that is that they do find a way to save him because they pick up fire those plasma cannons, and then Primal's just like, stay, like I don't really care that you're not the warrior you were. Just we want you here anyway. Like that's not that doesn't have to be your only purpose.
Yeah, and like he's a great addition to the team, you know, with that Maximal crew, and like you mentioned before, that Tarantulas was missing from Kingdom, and I think probably he was missing just because they already have Black Arachnia, so it's like 2 spiders, you don't necessarily need that, but Black Arachnia,
yes, you do.
Yeah, I know, but like Black Arachnia is completely absent from this because it's not her time to show up yet. But they showcased Tarantulas quite a bit, and I actually really like Tarantulas. He's one of my favorite bots ever.
Yeah, Tarantulas is essentially the Shockwave of Beast Wars. He's always kind of behind everything, and he's a great villain and foil to Megatron even.
Yeah, but I feel like he's even more disturbing than Shockwave. Like Shockwave in the comics is pretty scary and disturbing. But Shockwave in just the G1 cartoon is not as scary as Tarantulas.
Yeah, I would say comic Shockwave is more disturbing than comic Tarantulas, but you're correct about the cartoons. Definitely, show Tarantulas is worse. Oh, I don't know if you remember the second Wreckers book, Sins of the Wreckers.
Yeah,
that's actually about Tarantulas and Tarantulas and Prowl and Springer and all that, and that was kind of interesting. And it's pretty messed up, but I think Shockwave takes the cake with the whole everything he does in IDW.
Yeah, he's fucking horrible. Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned Pterosaur before, and like I completely forgot about him. I forgot about him until I read this Beast Wars comic, and then I was like, oh shit, yeah, that's right, he was in the first season.
Pterosaur is a little more on the forgettable side.
Yeah,
he is he probably is the most forgettable character, maybe Scorponok in that first season of Beast Wars. But I mean, like to not have Tarantulas Waspinator in Kingdom is horrible. Yeah.
And they have Waspinator in this, and they do a good job, like kind of having his little buzz noise that he makes,
Yeah, and it's just nice. It's just comforting to see him getting beat up and blown up, and putting back together later on. It's just nostalgia.
Yes. Isn't it like I think Dinobot rips off his arm at one point and hits him in the head with his own arm?
Yep, and that's perfect. That's exactly what has to happen with Waspinator.
Right. Is it an ongoing series?
Yeah, it is. I think it originally was only supposed to be a mini-series, but it is definitely confirmed as an ongoing series. So I'm very happy about that because I'm excited to read it every month now. It's like the only book I'm buying, really.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you are, man, because it's really good. Just trying to think if there's any other details about. Oh, well, okay. So in this, they mentioned that Megatron's original name is Galavar. They show him change it to Megatron in honor of the original Megatron. I thought that Optimus Primal, he's very, very similar to the show version of Optimus Primal, but he's kind of giving me a little bit of vibes of like Hot Rod from.
I would actually say he's a lot more like the animated Optimus Prime, who was a lot more inexperienced and who kind of leaned on Ratchet a bit for advice and stuff, like kind of the grizzled veteran. So much like Primal is talking to Rhinox here. So another reason why I really like this version of Primal a lot too, because it reminds me of animes.
Nice. Did Josh Burcham ever work on a Transformers animated comic? Was there ever a Transformers animated comic?
Yeah, there was a little more of a kid-friendly one, and yeah, there is at least something from IDW that was Transformers animated. It was more a rehash of the cartoon episodes, but I don't think Josh was working around then because that even predates the. I think it predates the IDW verse or it's very early days of it because I think that comic came out more around when like the Simon Furman Asian series were coming out.
Yeah, which I enjoy those too. You know.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Grimlock before, and they referenced Grimlock. That's why I was kind of thinking, is Erik Burnham writing that book too? Because
yeah, that was a great yes. I love that they referenced Grimlock and the name Dinobot and all that. That was fantastic. And I looked up that author. It's actually Steve Orlando.
Oh, so, okay.
So I'm kind of pumped about that. That they have a good writer that I'm familiar with. A known quantity, basically.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You don't really. That's interesting. That might actually be the first time like a Marvel. Well, he's done some Marvel work now, but he's definitely done a lot of DC stuff. That might be the first time
I particularly remember liking his solo Midnighter run.
Right, exactly. But what I'm saying is that like I don't think there's ever been a person that's worked on like superhero books that we know that has transitioned to Transformers. I don't think that's ever happened before.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, you don't really see too many big two writers going over there to a property like that. And it's funny because Marvel was Transformers was Marvel at a time.
Right. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I am definitely down for reading more Beast Wars books, moving forward. And hopefully if there's ever another Transformers cartoon, it can kind of take a page from like Transformers Animated or this Beast Wars comic and be just kind of more fun, not as serious, not as dire, really appeal to that younger audience to get people to be Transformers fans versus like kind of appealing to an older audience, but not being that complex,
Yeah, it's trying to appeal to an older audience, and yeah, exactly what you said. Not as complex, and it's not what they actually want.
Yeah, we don't want it. We're fucking old.
Yeah, and I wanted to say this earlier. I know we're trying to wrap up here, but like this show in general, and I keep seeing this the cramming of Beast Wars and G1, and it makes me very, very worried about the Rise of the Beasts movie because they're going to cram in all this stuff. And it's gonna be this all over again.
Yeah.
So I really hope that the kind of the goodwill they earned back, or the little goodwill they earned back with Bumblebee, I hope they're able to keep that going. But I'm hesitant at this point.
No, I completely understand. Is the director of that movie the director that did Bumblebee?
It was Travis Knight did Bumblebee, right?
Yeah, I have a feeling it's not.
I don't think it is. No. I know the name of the director. Bumblebee was Travis Knight, and
the new movie has this guy that is in Hamilton. Jr.? I'm sorry, who?
Stephen Caple Jr.
Cable, like
Caple.
Oh, Caple. Okay, I was like, okay. I have no idea who that is.
I don't know either.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of have like a little bit of a good vibe because the main guy in it is this guy from Hamilton, and I really like him in Hamilton, and so I think he's pretty charismatic. So I think he could be more like Haley Steinfeld, right? That's her name, versus Mark Wahlberg or fucking what's his face. Just do it.
Stephen Caple Jr. Directed Creed 2.
Okay. That might be something.
Wait, is this a TV show? Grownish? That's a TV show.
Yeah, probably. I think it might be like a spinoff of like Blackish or like that show.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, actually it is.
There you go. All right.
Yeah. So Creed 2. I haven't seen either of the Creed movies, but maybe have you?
No, I wish I did. I actually really wanted to see that because I like what's his face, Michael B. Jordan, so much.
Yeah.
I was gonna say though that you're right. Like when I read a summary of the movie, It's just sounding like there's so many different factions, and they're trying to like tie the Michael Bay movies and the Bumblebee movie together. And
yeah, it was like a character synopsis of it. So they have a couple Autobots, a couple Maximals, a couple Predacons, and then they're throwing in what they're calling Terrorcons.
Terrorcons, yeah. Which
is an actual Decepticon faction, Abominus, but it's going to be led by like Scourge, which is a connection to Unicron, obviously. And
right.
I think they're putting Nightbird in this. Is that what I read?
Yeah, Nightbird is in it.
So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, one more. I was talking about the movie real quick too. This super bothers me. So they one of the characters that are in the movie is Mirage. Mirage is like a Formula One car from the original cartoon. But in this, he's a Porsche 911. Z9, whatever the heck it is. I'm not really much into the cars myself, but that's G1 Jazz. Like that is the car that's G1 Jazz, and I'm like it just bothers me so much.
Yeah, you got one job, people. Match the robot to the car. You can't do that shit. What the hell, man?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I hear you. There's always little details of that in the live action movies that just bother me too, but. I don't know. If it's anything like Bumblebee at all, then I'll be happy. But I'm worried like you are as well.
Yeah. I mean, Bumblebee was good enough to get me to buy movie toys again. Like I bought a bunch of Bumblebee movie toys. Like I thought the characters were good, the designs were good. It was interesting.
Yeah.
But I stopped buying the movie toys after like I think the third movie was the last one I bought a whole bunch from.
Oh, really? You went that far?
Oh God, no! I bought a bunch of the Dinobots before too. God, I didn't buy anything from the last night. I swear.
You sound like a guy that had like a drug habit or something. Like I haven't touched it. I didn't, or like a
I didn't have no plastic crack.
Yeah, the plastic crack.
Yeah, I do refer to plastic crack all the time. I mean, it's terrible. I buy too many toys.
You didn't own those fucking racist like bots that turn into an ice cream truck, right?
I have the ice cream truck version and their individual car versions too, Skids and Mudflap.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, I mean, that's cool.
No, the first 2-3 movies, I bought everything, pretty much everything.
Yeah. Okay.
I started to slow down a little bit by 3, but like, I bought most of it. And honestly, the toys then, some of them were really fantastic, especially some of the original characters they just made toy lines. They just made it into the toy line. There was this character Breakaway who was like a jet. It was an incredibly unique transformation. He's actually in one of the movie video games.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some gems there, even though the overall style is a little too busy for my tastes.
Yeah, I mean, ditto. I still see those toys like when I go to the supermarket. They have some of them, and it just kind of rubs me the wrong way just looking at them. I just didn't like the designs in the movies in general, but I did like the designs for Bumblebee for the most part. If you could send me a link of that jet, I'd like to see him.
Breakaway, yeah, I'll send you that.
Cool.
There are actually 2 jets, Breakaway and Stratosphere. I'll send you both of those.
Okay, sounds good, man. It's a date. So anyway, I gotta wrap this up. I gotta go do something with my wife, but Brian and I will be back this either Friday or Saturday, depending on when I can watch Suicide Squad.
Oh, wait a minute. Did you hear the Suicide Squad? You can watch tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, all right. Well, it's shit. All right. Yeah, maybe Friday night it is then. That work?
Yeah, I'm down.
Oh, sweet. So me and Brian, we got our date for Friday night. And we hope to see you guys with us too. Let us know what you thought about Kingdom. Let us know if you've ever read a fucking IDW comic of Transformers. And if you've read this Beast Wars comic. We just want to talk to other Transformers fans. But until then, Brian and I will be eagerly looking forward to Suicide Squad. And we thank you guys for watching.